we're part of the SunSpaceArt team, and we're hopefully going to be teaching you about shadow puppets, but also making one today as well. Before we do that though, we're going to give you a quick introduction as to what we do and our latest project as well. So I will start. My name is Sehar, and I am an educator and content creator, and I also make art as well. I'm very passionate about it. In university, I studied art history, and I focused a lot on Japanese art in particular. And I was very interested in things like architecture, in castles, and in woodblock prints as well. And just in case you don't know what a woodblock print is, I've actually got a wonderful example for you here. Don't know if you can see. This one's by an artist called Hiroshige. But since university, after studying all of that, I've been doing lots of teaching in different schools, and I've been making lots of content, making my own art, and I've been doing some charity work and fundraising as well. So over to you, Christabel.
Thank you, Sehar. So yeah, I'm Christabel, and I was really lucky to meet Sehar working on some after-school clubs in London. And I really enjoyed teaching, both in primary and in secondary education, and I split my time between the classroom and the art studio. My work looks at capturing real life through drawing, and I love using really bright colours. And my most recent projects has been looking at landscape. So I thought this is a postcard of the work, but using lots of colour and patterns, mark making with different materials. So that's what I make and do. And together, Sehar and I have been working on a project for students to learn about how shadows are made by making your own shadow puppets. And we created packs full of ideas, information, and materials to use that can be both made at home and in the classroom. So we're really excited to share with you our project, and hopefully you'll be the first ones to test it. We really hope you enjoy it.
Yes, exactly. Before we get into the really creative part, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the history of shadow puppetry, and then Christabel is going to share a little bit about the science of shadow as well. So shadow puppetry as an art form has a huge history. So it was thought that the first shadow puppets were made in either China or India, and that was all the way in the first millennium BCE, so a very long time ago. Early shadow puppets were made from things like cloth and fabric, and some, very interestingly, were even made from animal skin. Christabel actually has a few examples of these that she's going to show you in a minute, but I'm just going to tell you a little bit more. Early shadow puppets, well, most shadow puppets are used to tell stories, sometimes religious stories, and they were used to entertain as well. Many different countries and cultures have a long history of shadow puppetry, and these are countries like Turkey, like Indonesia, and like Greece, so really all over the world. Have a look at the puppets that Christabel has.
So these are shadow puppets made in India. I went out there on a residency, and I found a puppeteer who showed me how he made them with all these beautiful colours. And these are Hindu puppets, Hindu characters, and this is a Hindu god. So they're quite big because they'd be on a really big performance stage for people to look at.
Exactly. And we're just going to show you now, actually, a really good example of a shadow puppet performance.
So it's just going to be a little clip, but it shows you how they're made. You can see the hands behind, and there's music playing. Really beautiful to look at.
Really beautiful.
And they tell stories. So there's the puppets in action. So we know a bit about the history. But what about, the science behind it? What about shadow? What is it? Some of you might be familiar with the story of Peter Pan and how he tries to catch his shadow and then sews it back together. But that's not true. That's a story. It's fantasy. And in reality, you can't ever lose shadow. Shadow comes from light. And when the sun is shining, it keeps us warm and it allows us to see. But but you should never ever look at the sun. And
Yeah.
with a torch, you can collect light. And when you shine the torch, the light travels. And it travels in a straight line. And then it'll only stop if there's an object that is in its way. So the space behind, in fact, if I I've got a board here so I can demonstrate. But if I put the scissors in front of the light, this is the object, and it causes the shadow behind it because the object in front of the light is trapping the light, is stopping the light, sorry. So the light goes in a straight line and it hits on the object and it makes a shadow.
Now we're actually going to do something very similar to what Christabel just did. We're going to do 2 quick exercises before we get to making your shadow puppet. It's time for you to experiment. So we're just going to take either an object that you have lying around, or you can use your hands, and we're just going to make a shadow. So think about where your light source is. My light source is over there. Christabel's is in front of her, and we're just going to block the light and make a shadow. You can see I've got one, very clear one here of my hand. And we just want you to experiment, first of all. Just have a look. What happens if you move your object or your hand, if you move it away from the light source? So my light source over there. So I'm going to move it closer to the wall. What happens? Does the shadow get darker? What happens to the shape of it? And then what happens when you move it a bit closer to the light source? Look at the shape of it as well, and look at the sharpness of it.
Or if you move your object or your hand.
Exactly. You can make different shapes, can't you? What were we doing, Christabel? We've got a little bunny there we were doing.
Weren't we?
Yeah.
No one you can make with an elephant or something.
Yes, I've got to practice my elephant. It's a little bit difficult. If anybody else wants to try it at home, you start with this, and then you put it downwards, and then you put your other hand on top of it like that. You cup it. Will it actually work? Will it?
Can you have a go? Again, it depends on where the light is hitting. So
it's very hard.
That's the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Once you're done having a look at that, please do let us know. Do comment and let us know what patterns you've noticed, anything else that you've noticed. But once we're done with that, we can actually try the next activity. So we're going to do the same thing, but we want you to actually draw a character or an object this time. And it can be completely from your own imagination. But find yourself just any scrap bit of paper, just a little bit of paper. I've got some here, small piece, and find yourself either a pen or a pencil.
I'll be demonstrating here like this too, so you can
exactly. If you're having a bit of trouble, just follow along with Christabel's demonstration. But what we're going to do, actually, what I'm asking you to do is draw a continuous line. So we don't want you to take your pen or pencil off the paper once. We want you to draw the whole shape in one line.
Exercise, isn't it, Sehar? So
it's great, yeah.
Think of something quite simple, maybe.
Yeah, we're going to do this with you, by the way.
So I've chosen, these are some I did earlier. I did a bunny and I did an elephant. This time, I think I might do, I'm going to do a carrot.
A carrot for your bunny?
A parrot. Because I really want to make the parrot fly. So I'm just drawing a continuous line. Same for you, if you've got, it's just an exercise. So on a scrap piece of paper, and just draw the outline of the parrot. Well, for me it's parrot, but you, anything.
Anything you like. I drew a very strange, exotic looking leaf, exotic even. But I might draw now a tree for your parrot, actually.
Great.
Let's see.
Okay. And out a shape. They look a bit like cookie cutouts, don't they? Or like
exactly.
Play-Doh and made shapes. So you're not thinking about the detail, you're just drawing the outline. And it can be really simple. It could be even just a moon or a cloud. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Exactly. And for those speedy people that are already done making their drawings, We're then going to ask you to cut them out. And if you need a little bit of help cutting, please do ask the adult in the house, or if there's anybody else that can help you, please do ask.
You can just follow the line that you've drawn out. Doesn't matter if it goes a little bit different.
Yeah. And this doesn't need to be detailed yet. We just want the shape. We don't need any kind of clothes or any details, accessories. That will come in a bit.
Yeah, because the most important thing with the shadow puppet is to get the silhouette. And the silhouette means to have the whole shape of the object, so that when you shine it in the light, in fact, we'll try it. I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah, and please do follow along with us. Please do try this as well.
Yeah,
I want to see your parrot first, Christabel, before you see my tree.
So this is my parrot. I'm going to place the parrot. See.
Oh, that's great. It makes a really good shadow.
Actually, my hand looks a bit like a branch or something, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. This is my very simple tree in comparison.
It's good.
Oh, I don't think it's big enough.
It's just an exercise, isn't it? It's to experiment.
There we go.
That's how you learn, isn't it? It's through trying things and not being, worried about anything. It's just to try things.
Exactly.
So we hope the experiment with the shadow has helped you understand how shadows are made. It's now time to make a more complicated shadow puppet, okay? Meaning we'll decorate it, or if you have any scrap pieces of lovely card, or I've got some sticker stars here and some coloured paper. I've got some lovely marble paper. You can then spend a bit longer on it. So we've got 15 minutes to just play with making a more complicated shadow puppet. So you might want to use a template. For example, I might carry on working on my puppet, my parrot, or you may want to do a different one. It's up to you. Okay, so we're going to do it as well. So we're always here, and in fact, Sehar and I really like to have a conversation at the same time when we're making work. So
yes, well, we know so much about shadow puppets now. So much of the history and everything, and the different types and everything. I'm actually going to use card for mine. I'm going to use nice bright bit of card. Don't worry too much about your materials, because basic materials are something to draw with and a bit of paper. It doesn't need to be anything complicated.
You can always color in the paper, or it could be that you've collected some recycling materials, such as I've got little bits of old cardboard, which I think I might use to hold my parrot up. So
That's a good idea.
Lying around, it really doesn't have to be complicated at all. The main thing is to have a bit of paper and a pen or a pencil. I'm going to make my parrot a bit bigger.
I think I'm gonna go with a ship, I think, or a boat, a little boat.
Ooh. And this is the time when your imagination is left to kind of play with. Maybe you can come up with a story for your character. Earlier, I made a palm tree, and whilst I was making the palm tree, it made me think of a lovely hot tropical place, maybe an island, and that helped me think of the parrot. And so it's building a story that you can play with when you make the shadow puppets, when you actually use the puppets to make the stories as shadows. Also, we don't have much time here, but you can carry on working later on if you want to. That's what's fun about a project, is it never really has an end.
Especially, actually, the interesting and unique thing about shadow puppets is that you can actually keep changing it. So if you're not happy with the shape, if you're not happy with the details on it, you can just take your scissors, change the shape. You can add bits and pieces onto it. I might need to do with my boat, actually.
I find it's more helpful to draw out the shape and then cut it out so that you can use it to check with the shadow. For example, with this little one, if I check with what the shadow looks like on the back, I can then change it. I can cut out maybe some more feathers. I'll show you whilst I make this one.
I'd be really excited to see what everybody comes up with. I hope you guys are leaving lots of comments and feedback. I'd love to see if anybody could come up with like full stories as well, and maybe tag us on Twitter under SunSpaceArt so we can have a look as well.
And some of you might be struggling with the drawing side, and you might want to start with the story first and then do the drawing, or the other way around. Maybe if you're not sure about the story and how you're going to get your puppet, your shadow puppet, alive on the wall, just carry on making it. There's no pressure. I'm a big fan of experimenting and trying new things, and you can make things with barely anything. You don't need lots of fancy things to be creative.
Exactly. I'm almost. How are you doing, Christabel? Oh, your parrot looks great. I'm almost done.
I've got a bit of tissue paper, so
Nice.
I just fold scrap, but I might make my parrot have some colour.
That's a good idea, actually. I've got a really big golden star that I really want to use, so I might pop that on my boat.
Yeah. I'm using a bit of glue to stick on some feathers. And whilst I'm doing this, I'm also thinking about my story, and I'm thinking, where does my parrot belong? Where is it? And maybe it will go on a journey. I'd quite like it to go and discover some new places. Maybe even go on a trip to space.
Oh.
If it goes to space, what kind of accessories might I need? Or what might I don't know, what would my parrot like? Would it like a friend to go with it? And what might it see? That's what's so nice about storytelling and imagination. And I'm going to use a bit of old cardboard to hold my parrot. A lollipop stick also works quite well for another time.
Christabel was actually saying earlier today that if you guys wanted to work on your shadow puppets a bit more after this session, you can actually go outside and pick up things from nature, like dried leaves or little twigs and things like that. I thought that was a really good idea.
Thanks, Sehar. Okay, before I get too carried away with the details, I'm going to check what it looks like when it's a shadow.
That's a good idea.
Ooh. See, so actually sometimes when you look at the puppet, it looks different to the shadow. So think about the silhouette, the outline, because a shadow doesn't have any patterns on it. It's just the shape of the object, where the object is in the way of the light. For example, with the hand. It's nearly the end, I'm afraid.
Yes.
Can we see your puppets? Come on, Sehar, let's see yours. That's
Thank
the
you.
parrot. Oh, that's the ship with a star. Yeah.
We've made little waves for it as well. Should we see
Okay, so let's see how it can go up and down then. Put the waves across as well. Let's see if we can see the story there.
There you go.
So the ship's going up and down.
I think my
That's brilliant. And you've got a parrot. Now, Christabel, what's the story about the parrot? We need a story to go with the parrot. Maybe it could be on the ship. Don't sail us like.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I was thinking he's a bit lonely and he'd like to have someone to go on a trip with.
Yeah.
And since he can fly, he'll go and discover different places in the world, or maybe even go out to space, but then he'd need some equipment. So that was how far I got with my story.
Oh, that sounds good. So we've had a lot of really good feedback. You know, everybody said they're enjoying it and they're doing different sorts of things. I'm going to make different sorts of things. You've got a lot of applause there, but I think they probably need to think about it a little bit and gather their materials. But lots of ideas. Christabel, I'd love to learn a little bit more about those beautiful shadow puppets. And have you seen a shadow puppet show? I mean, they have a big theatre sometimes. Tell us a little bit about that.
We shared a very small clip of a video because I was just explaining, Helen, how beautiful these puppets are to look at, but also how they animate them, so how they bring them to life.
Wow.
And so they'd have I've got a curtain behind me, and it's a bit transparent, so you can see, and if you put the puppet behind it, the shadow would come, and you'd be able to bring the puppet alive, similar to the video we made. And yeah, I've seen a few performances in India when I was out there on a residency, painting and teaching. And it's all about sort of the imagination for other people to come up with, in their heads, they can come up with some beautiful stories and imagery. But the puppets themselves are so lovely to look at.
That sounds lovely. And I've seen them quite big as well. Can they be quite big sometimes?
Yeah, so they can come in all sizes, like this little parrot, or you get, so for example, this one is quite medium size, and then you can they can build landscapes, and like Sehar was making the waves, you could make an enormous, like a really big theatrical scene of it, like a cinema screen, but for the puppets. Okay,
well, somebody's made a donkey, I think, and they said their donkey's leg is broken. So what can they do about it?
Oh, do they have a little bit of glue that they could attach the leg? Or maybe they could make another leg for it?
Sometimes don't the joints move? Sometimes if you get very clever, you can make it so that some of the arms bend, or the joints move, or the legs move. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, that's going to be hopefully part of our pack as well. But yeah, if we had a bit more time, you could have put, I think they're called split pins, and you put them through the joints that you want to move, and then it's much easier if you attach a stick to the arm, and then you can move them about a lot easier. You can make them do actions and dancing and all sorts.
Those ones have got joints, have they? That's right. You have to be really careful with those split pins, not let your little brothers and sisters have them, don't you? So they're really only for older children.
Bits of string.
So, a little bit of string. Okay, so that's a little bit safer, isn't it? So just 2 holes, maybe with a hole punch or something.
Yeah.
And then put some little bits of string in, and that's perhaps not quite as dangerous for the little babies or brothers and sisters to get hold of. So wouldn't it be nice if some of the children that are watching maybe did something at school and made a little shadow puppet theatre at school when they get back, perhaps, or put it together individually? That would be absolutely lovely.
Ideal for families in lockdown at the moment, isn't it? It's a nice activity.
Yeah,
for families to do.
I used to send some little characters to my cousins, and they'd send some back to me. So even if you don't live together or you're far away, you can still do things, can't you, through communicating?
Yes, that's a great idea. And I think you even if you don't feel you're very good at drawing, maybe you could get a picture or something and then copy the outline, because you just need the outline, don't you, of an animal like your parrot or your horse or your ship or whatever it is, and then you could draw the outline and then cut it out and make the shadow. Maybe you could use a torch to make the shadow if you haven't got a lamp coming through or something like that. That would be good.
You may even be able to use some greaseproof paper, which is like tracing paper, and draw out. If you find it too difficult to draw your own shape, you can, like Helen says, draw the outline from something else, but you can also trace from an object.
Well, that's absolutely wonderful. So thank you so much, Christabel and Sehar, for sharing that lovely activity. And as I've said before, we're going to keep some of these activities available on YouTube, so that if anybody's missed them or wants to tell other people about them and share them, they can tell them, and then they can go and have a look and try it for themselves. So thank you so much to both of you for joining us this morning. That's been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. No worries. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Lovely.